Hello, and welcome to the Box Federal Summit today. We're extremely proud to bring you this summit with our partners from GovExec. My name is Win Elder, and I am the Managing Director for Global Public Sector at Box, the cloud content platform, and I'll be your host today. This summit is designed to help our audience get a deeper understanding of how you can improve your mission success for your agency by using a secure, easy-to-use content platform. We'll be focusing today on secure collaboration in the federal agencies as the main example to talk through this challenge, but obviously the ability to securely have access to your data no matter where it resides or wherever your employees access it is of critical importance to all federal agencies in a wide variety of use cases. Our session today is divided into three main sections. First, our co-founder and CEO, Aaron Levy, is joining us today, and he'll lay out a fascinating view of the current state of IT in most agencies and the commercial sector and discuss how a secure content platform can solve many of today's challenges. Then we'll deep dive on three aspects that are of critical importance to federal agencies. First is empowering their people with seamless collaboration and workflow for people and organizations both inside and outside your network. Second is connecting your agency by integrating with existing IT architecture and all of your existing apps. And the third aspect is protecting your content through frictionless security and compliance. And then finally, what I think will be the highlight of the session, we'll have sort of a fireside chat with three phenomenal government leaders who have dealt firsthand with these challenges from the end user perspective and have significantly improved their ability to accomplish their agency's mission. And then we'll open it up for a Q&A session and what we hope will be a robust and educational session for our audience members. And with that, let's get started. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Aaron Levy to the virtual stage. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. Our audience is ready to start solving problems. Over to you.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Win. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate everybody taking the time today. I know there's certainly a lot of stuff going on in the world, and we deeply appreciate your attention and interaction today as we talk about the future of work and what we're building out with the Content Cloud. Just a little bit about a background of the company. So we started Box back in 2005, and if you kind of transport yourself back to 2005, and you kind of put your head in that space. Think about the environment of computing. We were working on BlackBerries. Internet Explorer was the leading browser. You had relatively slow internet connections globally. We were just getting the world wired up with cable, and we were in the early stages of very, very early stages of fiber. The cost of hard drives in some cases were 100 times more than they are today, so you couldn't store a lot of data on the internet at that point. And so in that environment, what we did at Box is we decided that the trends, even though that was the state of technology at that time, the trends of technology were going to be very different going forward. We would be more mobile, internet would get faster, storage would get cheaper, computing would get more performant. And in this future world, we'd want an easier way to be able to work with our data and be able to access our information from anywhere. So the days of sort of running extremely expensive network storage environments or having to set up SharePoint sites, we felt like those wouldn't really work in the future. So we wanted to build an easier way for end users to be able to securely access and share files from anywhere. And the adoption of Box and the growth of the product has well exceeded even our kind of wildest expectations when we started the company, which is something we're just incredibly proud of. We get to work with over 100,000 customers globally. And so outside of the government, just for a brief second, you can think about any kind of small, mid-size, or large enterprise that is moving quickly, that has a lot of information to work with. These are kind of our ideal customers. So fast-growing companies like Spotify or Airbnb, large leaders in their industry like Apple or Amazon or Cisco in the tech industry, major industrial or consumer product companies like folks like Lockheed or Nike use Box globally to be able to collaborate. Fujitsu, any kind of large global operation. And one thing that I've actually been really kind of proudest of over the past decade is the adoption of Box within the federal, state, and local government space. This is an area that is, I think, near and dear, certainly to everybody on this video, but I think anybody who cares about civic duty and the impact that the government has in the world and society. And so it's been a huge honor to be able to work with so many different institutions all around the world. And this again includes 10,000 government agencies. Obviously, you can see many of the federal agencies that we work with on this slide in the U.S. In particular. But what we get really, really excited about and what we're really passionate about is our ability to enable new ways to work with information. So our mission at Box is to power how the world works together. And we think so much incredibly important work is happening in the federal government. Just a couple examples of the kinds of use cases that we get to work with our customers on. We see Box being used in a range of industries, sub-agencies in the government, whether that's NASA, obviously an incredibly important mission, their collaboration with partners in the private sector and really around the government as they literally go and explore the edges of the universe. The U.S. Forest Service, which has obviously an unbelievably important job to play in just keeping obviously so much important land safe, protected, and amazingly useful for us as citizens. U.S. Department of Justice, obviously an incredibly important mission. We're very proud to be able to work with that agency for really important work around collaboration securely. So if you think about all of the agencies in the U.S. government or even at the state and local level, there's a tremendous amount of collaboration around data and content. We're really proud to be able to work with so many amazing organizations. And again, we're 16 years into this mission now, and we're proud that the evolution of our platform and all of the innovation that we've been driving is well recognized across the industry. So whether that's a Forrester or Gartner, many of the leading analyst firms have endorsed the fact that our platform is really ahead on a number of key criteria that I think you all and certainly our broader customer base cares a ton about. So security, compliance, scalability, workflow, content management, and so much more. So we certainly invite you to check out some of these reports offline and just take a look at how the market is shaking out. Stepping back for a second, I think this is it's a really important kind of moment to really think about where the world is going in the future and where work is going. When we started the business, as I mentioned, computing was getting a bit faster. We were getting a bit more mobile. Storage was getting a bit cheaper. That let us do a whole bunch of new things with computers that were never before possible in an efficient way. And if you think about the broader history of computing, it's really been about how do we start to apply software and computers to many of our hardest structured problems in the world. And how do we start to automate processes? How do we record data that's incredibly important, whether that's financial data, whether that's ERP data, HR data? How do we use computers to really provide a wrapper around existing processes and workflows and put those workflows into software? And that's a lot of what computers have helped us achieve. But if you think about it, fundamentally, we are still at the very, very early stages of what computers can do to transform how we work. If you think about what COVID did, unfortunately, it was really driven by a pandemic. But what it did was force the world to rethink almost every single thing about work. It changed us in terms of being able to work from anywhere, being able to work remotely, and get more distributed as organizations. It caused every single interaction to be thrust into needing to be digital first. So anything that can be digital, any transaction, any interaction with a supplier or a partner or a customer or a citizen has to go digital. Everybody sort of is expecting this now. And the need for data security has gone up enormously because as everything goes digital, we have to secure all of this information. So if you think about this sort of history of computers, we were throwing computers at these more structured problems. But all of a sudden the world has gotten completely chaotic and unstructured. We're working from anywhere. We're collaborating with anyone. We have to do so many different things in our organizations. We have all this unstructured work that's now happening in a digital form. And so we spent so many years solving this problem of all of that structured data and computing around that structured data. And yet today, when you think about so much of our important work, it's around our unstructured data. And when we think about unstructured data, there's certainly a variety of unstructured data. It could be a Slack channel, it could be an email thread, but so much of that unstructured data is content. It's the critical contracts in a procurement process. It's the R&D files for going to space. It's incredibly important investigative information that has to be collected and stored securely. So when you think about all of the unstructured information and data that we work with, that is ultimately at the source, at the center of powering how we work together. And certainly in the private sector, content has become central to how businesses run. But in the federal and public sector, content is fundamental to how agencies and organizations run. It's all of the information that we have to be able to share, we have to be able to organize, we have to be able to secure, we have to be able to connect the dots on, we have to be able to collaborate around and make sure it's available to all of the right people at the right time from anywhere. And so this is a really, really big problem because we've spent so much of our time, so much of our investment dollars, so much of our energy on those structured systems, the ERP system, the CRM system, the HR system. And yet we have all of this data across so many different platforms, across so many different ways that we're working. And we just don't think that makes sense anymore. When we go into a lot of environments for customers, whether they're in the private sector or the public sector, what we tend to see is that we have so much information stuck in silos. We have network storage environments, we have content management systems that are sort of these legacy on-prem content management systems. We have security technology that has to keep track of data. We have collaboration tools that might sort of create another copy of that information in another system. We have e-signature technology that files have to be able to route through. We have publishing tools to make sure the right people have access to content at the right time. So if you think about it, all of these technologies are really just trying to solve one problem, which is how do I make sense of my unstructured information? How do I secure it? How do I manage it? And how do I make sure it's available to the right people? The challenge, of course, is when we use 5 or 10 or 20 different technologies to solve these problems, it leads to fragmentation. It means that our data is in too many different places. Users get left with a very complicated IT environment, which drives down productivity. And ultimately, it means that we're spending too much money on technology, just unnecessary amounts of money on all of these systems, integrating these systems, backing these systems up, and making them all work. And we just don't think that makes sense anymore. We think there needs to be a different way to work with our most important information, which is all this unstructured data, so we can actually make sense of it and we can get value from it. And so this really leads us to where we are in the journey of content management. In the 90s, we solved the problem through legacy document management systems. In the 2000s, we solved the problem through enterprise content management technology. In the 2010s, we solved it through enterprise file sync and share tools. Today, we believe that there's a new approach that needs to be brought, which is this idea of having a content cloud, a single platform for cloud content management in one architecture that can power the full life cycle of content. And at Box, the way that looks is being able to, again, power this complete life cycle of content in one single platform. So the ability to power everything from onboarding of content automatically using APIs, data migration, and user clients, to being able to protect, secure, and classify that content intelligently. So adding threat detection, data classification, data loss prevention, all in one architecture. The ability to collaborate in real time on this information, whether that's a Word document, a Google document, a CAD design, or even web native content types that we've introduced and will continue to introduce in the future. The ability to automate workflows. So think about all of the workflows that we've built out for our structured data. So all the workflows around a CRM system or an HR system. Well, we haven't yet really automated a lot of the unstructured workflows. The contracting process, the procurement process, the employee partner onboarding process, the review and approval or compliance certification process. All of those things are able to now be automated and are able to be able to drive workflow automation around that. Then we've added e-signature into Box, and Burke will be certainly sharing this in just a few minutes, but we now have the ability to include native e-signatures built directly into Box. So any contract, any document coming in, we can power secure workflows around that e-signature use case as well. Content publishing, so the ability to expose content to different teams or departments from anywhere. Analytics, so think about all of the analytics we have on our structured data. The ability to see what citizens or customers or patients are doing with information. Well, now we can apply that to unstructured data. Imagine being able to share a document and see who's looking at it or what they're doing with it. Imagine being able to share a contract to see what status people are at in reviewing that contract. These are the kind of analytics that we're able to now generate with our unstructured information in the cloud. And then something that's insanely important to the government is the ability to retain, govern, and create policies around content. So how do we ensure that we have legal holds, e-discovery, document management policies, all around our most important information? And that is the sort of full life cycle of content that we are building out in a single platform. So instead of having to buy 5 or 10 different technologies and integrate them all separately, we're building out each of these capabilities in a single architecture, all in the cloud. And then ultimately delivering that architecture through an open platform via web services APIs to extend this functionality and content into any application you want to use. So imagine being able to have a complete content services platform with storage, sharing, collaboration, workflow, security, and a source of truth for your most important content that then gets integrated across Slack and Microsoft Teams and Salesforce and IBM, any technology that you want to be able to use. And then going even further, any kind of custom software that's being written for your agency or organization, we can then embed into via our platform. So we have a lot of customers that are mixing and matching, components of Salesforce and components of Box, build a custom interface to deliver a particular value proposition to the end user community. And this is the power of our APIs, is we make that very, very easy to do at scale. So when I shift a little bit looking forward, and then I'm going to hand the conversation back to Win and the rest of the Box team, we're making 3 big bets as a company. And you're going to see these bets and investments show up in everything that we do at Box. The first is that we want to empower people to be able to collaborate and work from anywhere. And so we're investing a ton in secure collaboration and workflow automation technology. So you're going to see a very broad roadmap, some of which we'll show today, but we'd love for you to tune in other capacities. But you're going to see us really powering all of the ways that you want to be able to collaborate and share and work with your most important content in the cloud. That's sort of component number 1 to what we're doing. Component number 2 is being able to integrate with all of your applications. We know that you're making investments across Teams, across Salesforce, across Office, across Google, Zoom, Slack, ServiceNow, Pega, IBM, WebEx, any technology. And we want to make sure that when you are managing and storing your content in Box, you can get access to that content from any app that you use. So interoperability, openness, and neutrality is sort of central to our vision and strategy. And then finally, data security and compliance will always be, again, central to everything that we build at Box. So being able to advance data security, data protection features, threat detection, data loss prevention, all of that built into our platform natively, again, in the cloud. So these are our 3 big investment areas that we're very focused on. We'd love to certainly be able to share even more about our roadmap, but we are just really getting started on this journey, and you're going to see a ton of innovation still left to come. So I just want to say thanks so much for taking the time today. We deeply appreciate all of the amazingly hard work that everybody on this call does to support incredibly important missions. We'd love to be able to support you in those missions. And thank you for taking the time out today to spend it with us. So back to you, Win.
Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate you joining us today. And as you mentioned, we're now going to dig down into those 3 pillars because we consistently find that almost every use case in federal agencies and commercial sector is underpinned by those 3 pillars. So we want to take a little time to deep dive into each of them. We're extremely fortunate to have with us to kick it off Burke Culligan, who's our Vice President for Product at Box, to talk about the first pillar. Burke, over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Win. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. As Win mentioned, I'm Burke Culligan. I lead our VP of Product for our apps group. So all the end user touch points that your users and folks in your organizations use every day, we're hard at work making those more awesome every day. So given what you heard from, what Aaron was talking about, let's take a deep dive into those 3 pillars that he mentioned around seamless internal and external collaboration, connecting your tech stack via integrations, as well as the frictionless security and compliance. Also, as you heard, in order to maximize the effectiveness of your content, we've built the world's most powerful content cloud to help you manage the entire content lifecycle on one secure platform. From the moment a piece of content is created or ingested or even ideated on, to when it's scanned and classified on the security and access side, or edited, shared, signed, published around the collaboration side, or even analyzed and or retained kind of on the back end of that content flow, the Content Cloud ensures it's always safe and accessible. So you can get to it, but in a safe, secure way. And that's really an important aspect of what we build with the Content Cloud. But we're just getting started. We have a whole lot of really interesting things to talk to you about and tell you about what we're doing and how we're building that out. So go ahead and I don't know who's running the slides, but let's jump a couple. Yeah, we've gone through all those. And so, yeah, you can just leave it there. I'll get there in one sec. We're excited to share these latest innovations for the federal government in those 3 areas of focus. And so first, we're going to start off with that empowering people to work together. And we're going to start off with, one of our newest products that we're really excited about, which is Box Sign. Delivering integrated e-signatures was the #1 ask from our Box customers. And so last November, we rolled out Box Sign globally. When you use Box Sign, you get a kind of peace of mind that every document signed is stored and managed securely in the Content Cloud, one single platform for that whole continuous e-signature flow and process. And you get the same enterprise-grade security, privacy, compliance that you'd expect from Box and the Box Content Cloud, all related to that e-signature flows and all the different touch points in those e-signature flows. And then best of all, Box business and enterprise customers get unlimited web-based signatures with no additional costs included directly in those plans. So really, really opening up the power of e-signatures and the power of e-signatures on Box to a much wider audience and much wider use cases. Go ahead at the next slide there. Native e-signatures in Box, included in native e-signatures in the Box Sign product, we have a seamless sender experience, really, really easy to pull that signature together, put all the pieces together, and then send it out to the people that need to review it, approve it, or sign it. Including reusable template support for standard documents like NDAs. So if you have common templates, common documents that you need signatures on all the time, really easy to set up those templates and send those out. Flexible routing and recipient permissions for all your e-sign flows. So you can kind of make it single person flow, double person flow, multiple people in parallel signing, or have a sort of serial flow where each person needs to take a step and before it moves on to the next person, all supported in Box Sign. We've added additional security with SMS-based signer verification as well as passwords, also to make sure that you can ensure the person signing it and receiving this is who they are and that they verify that through that. Really smooth signing experience across desktop and mobile devices, really easy to sign that. We're really focused on the speed of completion. When you send those documents out, we want those receivers to review them easily, sign them easily, and complete that signature flow. And then we also support more than 20 languages to enable digital attractions worldwide. So as you're dealing with different participants worldwide, really easy for them to see it in their native language as needed. So we're laser focused on continuing to build out the Box Sign product experience. We want to continue to add features and functionality and broaden the range of use cases that it supports, but a really, really great addition to the Content Cloud in this past year. Next, we also deepened our integration with Salesforce. With Box Sign, you can send documents for signature directly from that Salesforce interface on the Salesforce platform. You can also auto-populate cases, making it really easy for caseworkers to send out claim forms without ever leaving that Salesforce application. They can set all that up, use a template, send it out for signatures all directly from the Salesforce application. And it's all part of our Box for Salesforce managed package. So there's no separate app or download or anything you need to do. You get that Box for Salesforce managed package set up in Salesforce, and that includes the Box Sign flows as well. And then finally, in our vision to connect every app, we have a very robust and secure Box Sign API. So you can use this to power e-signature experiences in any custom applications you have that also either already use some sort of signature flow and could really benefit from moving that to Box, or maybe don't use an e-signature flow, but really could take advantage of an e-signature flow. You could build that custom right into your custom apps and have those flows really really well through the Box Sign platform. And this significantly reduces time to production for custom and third-party apps because we're extending that Content Cloud again deeper into all of your critical business apps. So we want to make it really seamless, as we've said, is sort of our core principle, really make it seamless to collaborate and get work done real easily all through that Box Content Cloud. And I can't really emphasize enough how important Box Sign has been and it will continue to be to our overall strategy. It's one of our top priorities. You can expect to see a ton more innovation and feature development and advanced feature development from us in the space, including connecting e-signature to the rest of the Content Cloud. So Box Shield, Box Governance, Box Relay. With Box Relay, you'll be able to kind of automate and move signatures through. And then even when those signatures get completed, you can have automated filing and classification and security attributes applied to those completed signatures. Really connecting that full workflow, not just the signature part, but everything before and after the signature part, and connecting that with Relay. And then talking of Box Relay, we've seen incredible momentum amongst our customers with this no-code workflow automation platform on Box. Our top 20 Relay customers are super users. They have about an average of 600 or so workflows being used to automate their processes across their organization. And we did some research with Forrester, and according to them, customers who use Box Relay save roughly $3.5 million in savings over 3 years by automating all of these processes that generally might be done manually or in other ways. And then it gets even better. Last summer, we made Relay available to more customers by including it in all our plans, starting with business plans and above. So more customers and their users can take advantage of this really awesome time-saving tool by building their own automated workflows. And now let's move on to one of our most popular collaboration features, Box Notes. With over 500,000 active users and millions of notes created yearly, and we get an average of 25 collaborators on every note. Teams all across Box are really using notes as the nucleus for working together and collaborating in really quick, fast, easy ways to capture the information that they need to get their work done or to move things forward, move projects forward, or whatever it may be. And we're really excited to introduce a brand new version of Box Notes, designed to support a broader range of collaborative use cases and activities and make agency collaboration even more seamless across the whole Box Content Cloud. We started off by really overhauling and building out a new editing engine for Box Notes, which then really gave us the foundation to build all kinds of really new, interesting features. So there's all kinds of new capabilities for content creation and organization, advanced table functions, call-out boxes to really highlight and emphasize different parts of content within that note. We're working on right now rich embedded functionality that will allow you to preview other files within the note, so you'll be able to embed audio recordings or video recordings or slide presentations, spreadsheets, whatever it may be, and you can embed those directly in the note, but then be able to the viewers of the note, users of the notes, will be able to interact with those pieces of content directly in that note. So now the note starts to become a really interesting, a collection of information and different types of formats of that information, where you can really drive real strong, seamless collaboration because all that information is there and usable. And then we're adding more ways to organize the content with automatically generated table of contents. You can see there kind of in that image at the top there, you can have these automated generated table of contents, checklists. Eventually we'll add tasks and at mentions and be able to call people out in certain elements of the note and whatnot. So really interesting ways to help drive more collaboration and functionality and activity within that note, really make it a key component of the team's activities and getting things done. And then finally, we also were adding inline cursors. One last thing on notes, so that when you're co-editing and live editing, you'll be able to see everybody who is that editing that file. There'll be a little flag there IDing that person. Who is that making that change there? You'll be able to see that and see where people are in the note. So really strong collaboration for multi-user. And again, we said we have almost an average of 25 collaborators on every note. So sometimes they're all in there together and you can kind of keep track of everybody. Really awesome progress on making Notes a true cloud-based collaborative tool. Super excited about the advances on Box Notes. And then moving forward, we're consistently heard from our customers that they're hungry for more ways to measure the performance of their content. There's all this content that flows in and out of the Content Cloud, and users are curious, admins are curious, everyone's curious. Who's using this content? How's it being used? How often is it being used? In some cases, maybe it's not being used, and even that is valuable information depending on what kind of content that is. So we're adding a lot of functionality and features to what we call content analytics interface, where we're giving you the power to really understand your content's impact. You'll be able to see there whose access is, how's the access been over time, who's downloaded what, who's viewed what over time, different time scales and whatnot. And so with these easy to understand visualizations and really user-friendly tools for analyzing it, we'll be able to put the power of information and understanding of how the content's being used into all your users or into your admins or the people who organize that. So you can really track those trends over time and get the information you need to build upon to create the great content you need to be effective across the organization. It's a really powerful tool. It sounds sometimes a little ephemeral, but when you actually start using it and feeling it, you can really understand how your content's being used for critical use cases for whatever those may be. So really, really excited. And then to take us through the next pillar of our compete guru, Aaron Wood, and he'll continue the conversation and tell you a lot about some of our integrations and how we work with other platforms. Aaron, over to you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Bert. Great stuff from product. Love seeing all the innovation, excited about all the things that have been released, all the things that are coming. So super excited about that piece of it. I'm Aaron Wood. I lead our competitive intelligence team and our product marketing org. And at Box, that looks a little bit different than maybe a standard or a typical CI team. Because we're so large in the partner ecosystem, a big piece of it is how we coexist and how we work together. So we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a bit in the second pillar about our platform and integrations, which enable our customers to connect the entire business via Box integrations, our open platform, our APIs, our developer tools. So we're really focused on connecting your business by building these integrations, extending that interoperability with all of your platforms so that Box can work seamlessly with your entire tech stack. Most enterprises now average over 200 applications. So that's wild. So the key to great software and making that seamless is how well it integrates across that full stack. And so this has really been Box's vision from the start, having that single content platform, making sure that it's deeply integrated with all of the tools that you use so that no matter where your workers are getting things done, you can manage all of that in one place, which would be Box. So we couldn't achieve this without a network of more than 1,500 incredible partners who share that vision as well. With these 1,500 partners, we power communication around business critical content using Box integrations with things like Microsoft Teams and Slack and WebEx and Zoom. We also enable productivity with documents and files created using Microsoft Office or Google Workspace, maybe Adobe, Apple iWork, whatever it is that you're working in. And then we also centralize business content. So the Box Content Cloud can integrate with Salesforce and ServiceNow and AutoCAD, and not to overuse this number, with over 1,500 other partner apps. So I'll probably keep saying 1,500 because, again, that piece is critical to what we're accomplishing with the Content Cloud. So again, regardless of what app you're using to share and collaborate on, you can have greater peace of mind knowing that the Box's enterprise-grade security and compliance and governance is applied across all of the content, across all of your applications. So when it comes to Office productivity tools, Microsoft, obviously one of the leaders that has defined modern productivity for the workplace. So, and they're continually reimagining that for this ever-changing world. And that's why Box has built integrations across the Microsoft 365 portfolio so that users have access to their Box content while using the Microsoft apps that they love to use and that help them just get their work done. So let's dive into some of our most popular Microsoft integrations. So today, Box for Microsoft Office, it enables you to create and collaborate files across Office Online, Office Desktop, Office Mobile app, with all of those changes being saved to Box. So this is definitely one of our most popular integrations, and we're always working to improve it based on customer feedback, which is why we're really excited about our latest announcement and enhancement to further streamline work when using our Box for Microsoft Office integration. So in this first quarter of this new year, we are enhancing this integration with Box for Microsoft Office to enable real-time co-authoring on the Office desktop and mobile applications. So users can co-author, simultaneously edit, collaborate on Excel, Word, PowerPoint files, again, on desktop, on mobile. And you've already been able to do that in Office Online. So now it brings it together, again, in the way that you work, making sure that these changes are automatically saved back to the Box Content Cloud. And along with that, you get some extra things like autosave and adding Box as a place. So lots of great enhancements there. This has definitely been one of our most frequently requested features. And so we're really excited to be able to deliver this very soon to help you work together more effectively across your internal teams, your external stakeholders, again, with everybody you're working with. So let's move on to Microsoft Teams. We launched a brand new Box for Teams integration last year. Now I should say well over a year ago, which embedded the core Box experience directly inside of Teams so that users can access their Box content while they're communicating and collaborating inside of Teams. So Box for Teams integration just really enables them to, again, you can create, you can share, you can open Box files directly inside of that Teams interface without having to go somewhere else. So, and this is exciting. As of yesterday, January 26th, depending on when if you're watching the recording, so we updated the Box for Teams integration so that customers can default to Box as the storage option in Teams. So what does this do? Well, this update allows organizations to unify your content in Box under, again, that consistent security and compliance and governance policy, and eliminate some of that user confusion and content fragmentation that you may have. This feature also will enable more granular options for IT. So admins, you're going to be able to deploy to all of your Teams users, or you can pick a select specific set of users or groups. So lots of flexibility there in how you deploy that piece of it out. So Box for Teams is one of our most used integrations, and we're committed to continually enhancing that as well to fit the needs of, again, this ever-changing modern workplace. Additionally, for our government customers and agencies and partners, we understand there are very specific compliance requirements. So today, our Box for Microsoft Office Online integration allows customers with FedRAMP Moderate or DoD IL4 requirements to be routed to the corresponding Office 365 US government cloud. So this will support a fully compliant experience when using Box for Microsoft Office to just really to ensure that whenever you're using Box and Office jointly, that the data, when it's being processed, when it's being stored, is only on those certified platforms. So this is just the tip of the iceberg on some of our integrations that we have across Microsoft 365 and even that broader ecosystem of, again, over 1,500 partners that we have, really to enable you to connect your organization across all your apps and keep it secure so people can get their work done and feel good about the security posture of it all. So we're always working to innovate, so check back often to see how we can fit across your entire tech stack. Now on to our final pillar, which is security and compliance. We're gonna pass it over to SE extraordinaire Jeff Sterling. But first, let's take a quick look at a brief video that's just gonna highlight many of the security challenges that federal agencies are facing today.
You see it all the time. A well-meaning employee clicks a deceptive link. A hacker sneaks into the company server. Or someone using a file sharing service loses access to a file that's been quarantined. Then they waste an entire day trying to recover the content. In fact, 52% of breaches start with malicious attacks, and experts predict that global ransomware costs will soon exceed $265 billion a year. Now, back up for a second. Let's look at it again, this time using Box. With Box Shield, every file gets instantly scanned from the moment it's uploaded, opened, previewed, shared, or downloaded. If malware is detected, Shield automatically restricts file downloading. And better yet, your Box admin gets notified right away, and teams can still preview, comment, and work with the file in online editors. So you stop the spread of malicious content without slowing work down. It's all made possible by Box Shield's frictionless, built-in security controls and detection capabilities that protect the flow of content inside and outside your organization. Our new innovations leverage third-party threat intelligence and deep learning-based malware scanning technology to power broader threat detection against sophisticated malware. That means higher detection rates and lower false positives. With Box Shield, you secure your most valuable content across different file types in every industry and department, from Excel spreadsheets and Word docs to PDFs and zip files. We're here to help you protect what matters most.
Awesome. So good afternoon, folks. As Aaron said, my name is Jeff Sterling. I'm one of the lead solutions engineers here at Box. I've been at Box for over 9 years, working within the federal and DoD space, as well as our commercial space. We're going to switch gears a little bit here and just attack this final pillar around security and compliance. So when you think about it, is security and compliance to Box is pretty much at the heart of everything we do. So we look at that as our core aspect of as we build product on a daily basis. And this is important as we go across to all the different agencies and organizations that we work with on a daily basis. Across our public sector customers, we see three major challenges when it comes to security and compliance. First of all, not all solutions really are compliant across the content lifecycle, because when you think about it, is a lot of this content is actually siloed into many different areas within the organization. So it becomes very difficult to maintain that compliance footprint and security across all those different silos. It can also become a cumbersome user experience for those end users, because when those users are trying to access that content, they have to find where that content might sit in one of those silos, figure out if it's the most current version of that content, and then be able to work with that content as needed and make sure they're staying compliant and secure of that content at all times. In addition, there's a lot of disconnected security and compliance strategies out there, because as you can imagine, with all these different systems that are out there, they need to now make sure all that security is in place across all those different areas. This makes it very challenging to keep content secure across all these systems all the time. So it's clear from a security landscape that with these complex and challenging daily items that are going on, maintaining government regulations becomes trickier and trickier on a daily basis for every agency out there. So at Box, we're dedicated to making it easy for customers to prevent these types of data breaches and preventing malware attacks within the Box platform. So there are two critical security risk areas that we focus on. The first one is around accidental data leakage, and the other one is around intentional threats. So when you think about it, we focus on two key areas, and those areas were mentioned in Box Shield. The first one being Box Shield for threat detection. With threat detection, we've built Box Shield so that we try to minimize these risks on these two pillars of smart access and threat detection. When you think about it, smart access is around building specific data leakage controls and prevention that can be based on classification of your data directly within the Box platform. And threat detection can be designed around making sure that any risky behaviors that might be happening within your environment are identified and captured and can be reviewed by the administrative team, but also making sure the spread of malware and ransomware is in check within your environment as well. We've seen that bolt-on malware detection solutions can actually create friction and disruption from an end-user work perspective. So by quarantining potentially malicious content, taking it away from the end user, so very cumbersome from not only the end user side of the house to get their job done, but now needs to be reviewed by the administrative staff to release it. By natively embedding malware detection into the Box Content Cloud, it gives that seamless end user experience for the end users so that they can still technically work with the content within the Content Cloud itself. On top of this, we just recently released our malware deep scan so that it gives the administrative team, as they're reviewing any content that might have been identified for malware, a deep level view of what exactly was identified within that content itself so that they can then investigate, potentially remediate, or work with the end users to what's going on with that content. This is all based on some of our back-end technologies we use, and it also gives the admin staff the ability to override some of these threat detections that have gone on within the overall environment. But the beauty of it is that the end user can still use their content, even though it may contain a virus, but it's kept within the Content Cloud so that they're not getting infected. So, for example, I'm actually working with a customer today within the DoD side of the house. They're actually using drones to capture videos. And those videos are coming on hardware that they don't necessarily, that it's not made in the United States. So what they're doing is they're using Box to be that intermediary layer as the content is offloaded of those drones and then put into Box, and they're leveraging our malware scanning to make sure that there's nothing within the videos themselves. Once that's been cleared, they can then bring it onto the government network and be able to use those videos over time. So it makes for them to not only be able to capture those videos quickly, deliver those videos into Box, make sure they're secure and clean, and deliver them to the HQ side of the house so that the HQ folks can then start to process and work with those videos. The second part is around smart access. So when you think about Box Shield, our smart access technologies really is around when content is uploaded to Box. And when you think about that, it can be natively classified within the Box infrastructure, either manually by an end user, because typically the users will know what their data is and how it may need to be classified, or you can even use automated classifications within Box. Once the content is classified, it has data classification applied to it within the Box Content Cloud, we can then apply native security controls on that content automatically so that the end users don't have to worry about, can I share this sensitive or internal-only file outside of my organization? The data classification will drive that access policy and make sure that that user does not use a feature set within the Box platform that might not be allowed for that particular piece of data classification on that content. We have support for many info types within the Box environment, file type-based classifications as well as being able to integrate with third-party tools like Microsoft Information Protection. But when you think about it, security is really only one part of our story. It really becomes a bigger picture of when you start thinking about the compliance aspect and delivering security and compliance together as one. So Box and the Box Content Cloud are able to deliver federal compliance requirements with a single platform. We deliver a single platform for our government customers as well as our commercial customers, so that we're focusing on one platform when we're making sure it's secure and compliant from a technology standpoint. And it's not just the federal requirements when you think about it, like FedRAMP and the DoD-IL side of the house. It's also things like HIPAA, FINRA, PII, PHI type of data that is being cross-pollinated within the federal space as well. I'm working with a division of the Army, the recruiting side of the house. They're actually capturing PII data from their candidates that are coming in via the recruiting side of the business. That's very sensitive data as it's being uploaded into the Box platform, but they know that because of Box, they're able to put that directly into the Box platform from a PII standpoint. When it comes to compliance, though, Box is up to date with all the industry standards in the federal government as well as the commercial space as well. And one of the big things, in my work with the federal government and my DoD customers, that first checkbox that I always see is, are you FedRAMP? Are you at a DoD IL4 level? So we're easy to come out and say, yes, we are. It's on a single platform. But what is Box's philosophy on security and compliance? Our philosophy is truly that, keeping that content in a single platform, in a single repository, so that gives our customers a single layer to enforce all their regulatory requirements as well as their security requirements. We have a very streamlined and easy to use user interface that a user coming onto the Box platform for their first time can easily acclimate and do their job within the first 30 minutes, be able to upload content, collaborate on that content very quickly and easily, but also maintaining the security and compliance posture that their organization and their agency would require. Security is not a first thought when building our products. It's a first thought when we build our products. It's not an afterthought, right? So we build as much native into the product as we can. So Shield being one of those things, but there's many other things directly within there as well. So security controls that aren't going to impact the end user as much as you would expect it to. But we also have a unified approach by building our industry best practices and providing flexibility to our customers as well. We realize that customers have made a lot of investments in different types of technologies and security tools, things like single sign-on, DLP or data loss prevention tools. That's okay. We can take those tools and we can integrate those tools with our unified approach for our platform so that you can still leverage those investments you have into your overall environment. So it's clear that Box really knows our security and compliance. And we've looked back and kind of the overall goal of what we're looking at from a Box perspective is really to try to apply flexible security for your content. So when you think about it is we can provide a tenant or an agency-wide setting to the content that's stored within Box, thus putting that overall blanket of security on the content that's stored. We can put an enterprise-wide setting for specific users or even specific pieces of content as it arrives within Box at a folder level or even a single file level. And that also enables us to be able to do things like our classification controls and tie security policies to those classification controls that we have within the product and make it very granular in regards to how the security is applied in Box itself. So finally, at Box, we really don't want to provide you too much on the security and compliance that we have, but also look at the overall flexibility that we have within the overall environment. So when you think about it, it's a holistic approach around all the content that sits in Box. From when the user starts to come into the Box platform itself, making sure that the device that they're connecting to Box meets the requirements that we have with the device controls. Authentication controls, so making sure that who the user is, they say they are, being able to leverage your identity provider if need be. Also being able to do the content controls at a very granular level and making sure even when the content has a classification, that those classification controls are there as well. As well as our threat detection, making sure content as it comes into Box is being scanned, evaluated, and protecting the end user on that malware or on that content as it arrives, and making sure that it does not have any malware or virus within it. And then lastly, even taking Box to that next level with an enhanced posture control. Like I said, is being able to take third-party tools and enhancing your controls in the Box environment and allowing those tools to populate Box with information, for instance, like Microsoft's information protection tool, and be able to connect that directly into Box and have those sensitivity labels feed into the Box data classification tools. So that's a high level on our third pillar, which is around frictionless security and compliance. What I want to do now is hand it back to Win, and we'll jump into our fireside chat.
Thanks, Jeff. Lots of great information in those presentations that we can dig into a little deeper during Q&A. Now we're going to shift to hearing directly from some government leaders who are addressing these challenges. For the panel, we shifted a little bit more towards end users instead of from the traditional CIO office perspective. And so you've heard a little bit about features and capabilities, but what we find government agencies are most interested in is accomplishing their mission, and that's where we want to focus on. And unfortunately, sometimes IT hinders those efforts as much as it enables it. So I wanted our audience to be able to hear directly from some folks who have addressed these challenges head on, share their journey in the hope that the audience today can learn from their experience. And we're extremely fortunate today to have three panelists to talk to you. Mr. Chris Cleary, Colonel Jay Johnson, and Major Daniel Kim are joining us today. And I'll let them introduce themselves shortly, but each of them is focused squarely on solving mission problems. And the focus today will be on how to leverage technologies to solve mission challenges and hope that our audience learns from their experience and they can attack some of their own challenges. So let's go straight across. If I could have each of you just say hello, briefly introduce yourself and your current job and responsibilities in that job, and then we'll move into some questions. Colonel Johnson, why don't you kick us off?
Hey, Wayne, thanks for allowing me to be part of this panel today. I'm Colonel Jay Johnson, commander of the 71st Flying Training Wing. We're one of 4 pilot training bases across the United States Air Force, job to produce pilots for the nation's defense. Proud to be part of that. And, you know, part of the reason I'm here today is over the last 2 years, we were challenged to transform the way that we train pilots in the United States Air Force. And part of that was offering early access and seamless access to content, and Box has been a massive part of that. So happy to be here today and happy to share lessons.
Thanks, Jay. Mr. Chris Cleary, if you could go next, please.
Hey, Wynn. Yeah, thank you. Chris Cleary, I'm the Principal Cyber Advisor for the Department of the Navy. A relatively new position within the department structure with the tasking to basically be the Secretary's advisor for all things cybersecurity, cyber warfighting. You know, we cover the kind of the waterfront on various different topics. I work kind of hand in hand with the Chief Information Officer, Mr. Aaron Weiss, for the Department of the Navy. And you know, there's a symbiotic relationship that exists between sort of the way that we enable our infrastructure and the way that we're trying to learn to fight that same infrastructure. Yeah, I've been in the job about a year, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And Major Kim?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. You know, I'm going to single myself out as a lawyer and do the disclaimer, the legal disclaimer that usually do, which is that the views that I present are my own, and they don't represent the views of the Department of Defense or the Army JAG Corps. And certainly it's not an endorsement of the box, but I'm more than happy to share my experience. So my job, I'm a defense counsel in the Army, but it's a twofold. I'm also a training officer. So we have about 600 active duty and reserve component paralegals, defense counsel, and defense investigators in the Army. And we not only train them on the basics of trial advocacy and investigative stuff, but also the advanced legal developments and case law. On the trial side, I represent soldiers who are accused of crimes. And that's the main role in which my experience with Box has become relevant.
Great, thank you. And I actually want to start with you, Major Kim, and I think the use case that is fascinating. I think most people in general know what the JAG Corps does, as you laid out, and attorneys for soldiers. But I was wondering if you could talk about sort of how, when you were a younger attorney, how did you handle your role as a defense attorney for soldiers, and that journey of, as IT has evolved, sort of talk through some of the pain points that you experienced, especially when we maybe went through deployments or from this work from anywhere based on the pandemic, and just sort of what were the challenges for mission accomplishment for you and your colleagues?
One thing is, as we know, information is such a big part of any kind of litigation. So in the beginning, sort of part of my career, what would happen is, I would have to get information, investigative information from the prosecutors. And that would come to me in a form of a DVD. Sometimes it would come to me through email or through a hard copy which then I would scan in. And then I would have to figure out how to process that information. And the information was stored in many different places, some in my local government computer, others on the shared drive, some on a hard drive, a physical case file. And there was information that was sort of scattered everywhere that I, as a defense counsel, had to figure out how to put them together. And the third challenge in the beginning that I had was trying to figure out how to collaborate with people that are on the case with me. Sometimes I would have a civilian defense counsel that I'm working with, which means I need to figure out a way to share all of the data and information and the evidence with the civilian defense counsel who's not on the government network. Sometimes I have a co-counsel who's not located within the same installation. So the information that I would share on my own shared drive would not be accessible by another Army Defense Counsel, because that Army Defense Counsel was located elsewhere. So it just really came down to a lot of old method of print it, photocopy it, and snail mail it, or burn it onto a DVD, snail mail it, or use DoD Safe or Amerdeck. Upload the file and then encrypt it and then send it over, which could be a very long process. But that's sort of, that was the routine, at least a few years back, when I was trying to figure out how to do a defense counsel work efficiently.
Yeah, as a former special court martial convening authority, I can relate to the stories there, and certainly, technology has enabled some ways to improve that process going forward. So, talk, if you don't mind, a little bit about when you got in your current role, what were you all looking for beyond the more easier way to do that and not have to carry aux boxes and floppies around and mail it and stuff. There's the inefficiency in the process that you just described was probably a burden just in the man hours that were spent doing that kind of stuff, as opposed to actually serving soldiers in your litigation role there. So what were you guys trying to set up as you try to improve that process?
Absolutely. I'll use an example from a case that I was on recently. It was a homicide trial that had a lot of investigative material. The first challenge was, how do I get it from the prosecutors? We were fellow Army judge advocates, but I still had to figure out how to get the information from them using something that was beyond just email or the DoD Safe, because of just a large amount of data that was involved. Uploading and then sending and then downloading was just taking too long. And it was causing us losing track of the information flow. So what we set up was we just used a box and we said, hey, look, I'll create a folder and I'll title it the case name and discovery. And then I would tell the trial counsel, the prosecutor, hey, you upload it. And then you don't even have to notify me, because then I'll get a notification automatically from Box that that information has been uploaded. And then once it's there, I know when it got uploaded, and we can all track when it was sent and in what form it was sent. And then I can easily download it, or I can simply just transfer it over to my digital case file on Box. So one is the discovery process has become efficient, much more efficient when utilizing cloud computing capability. Second thing is collaboration. Again, going back to the same example, the case was unique in that we had 4 attorneys total. I'm in Virginia, stationed at Fort Belvoir. I had a military co-counsel stationed in Georgia. And then I had 2 civilian defense counsel who were located in different parts of Texas. And we had our expert witnesses and consultants who were part of the case, were all over the country, and our defense investigator, who's also in Texas. So with all the people from different places, what was important for us was not only receive information efficiently from the government, but also organize it in a way that produces common operating picture. The old way was we would all have our own case file, digital content, and we would organize it in a way that was sort of unique to our own method. Inevitably, that resulted in communication lapse, because I would say, hey, this file that's part of this, do you know what I'm talking about? No, let me look through mine because I organize it a little differently. That was the old system, but what we have done was use one single online platform, the cloud-based platform that allows us to have that common operating picture, because we have one case file that everyone can work off of. Helps with, again, something that was mentioned, version control, and making sure that we track the progress and evolution of the content, but also making sure that we know where it is, and we have a good accountability of the information. So that's how we've been able to utilize cloud-based computing for collaboration as well.
Great, thank you. I want to shift over to Colonel Johnson now. And Jay, your role of training the next generation of pilots for the Air Force is fascinating to me. And could you sort of talk about that, about how the Air Force has trained pilots over the years, and then what the specific challenges the Air Force was facing from a variety of factors, the way I understand it, and sort of what the situation you were facing as a wing commander in charge of training the next generation of pilots for America?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Wynn. So, this started just a quick history lesson here. So we're about 1,900 pilots short in the United States Air Force right now, and that's across the Department of Defense. And there's a nationwide shortage for pilots in the commercial industry as well. Part of the reason we got here were personnel cuts. Another part were financial decisions made to divest airplanes. So one of our advanced trainers is getting divested, and our new trainer, the T7, doesn't come online, at least here at Advanced, until 2031. So we had about a 5-year gap where we had to figure out how we were going to provide advanced training to some of our folks. And the other part of this is we hadn't changed the way we train pilots in the last 30 years. The same techniques and tactics and things and equipment that we were using was the same thing that we used to train folks for the fight in Vietnam. And the fact is that we need a different skill set for that next high-end fight for a near peer like China. We've got students that learn differently than you and I did, quite honestly. They absorb information more quickly. And what we really needed to do was make better use of the time in the airplane, which is expensive. So part of that was every student that comes to pilot training now, the stack of books that we used to get, which was a mile high, would had all of our regulations on it. We're away from that now, and then everything, they get an iPad mini when they get here. And everything that they need is loaded on the box and it's on this iPad mini, and I can give that to them even before they get to pilot training. So if they graduate from the Air Force Academy and they're waiting to get here, I can give them early access to content, and they can absorb that information. And what we're finding is the earlier access that they get, once they get here, I can get them into the airplane faster, and they're also able to perform at a higher level in the airplane earlier. The example I'll give you, back when I went through pilot training, the average student soloed in that airplane from between about sortie number 9 and 15. I have students ready to solo in that airplane as early as the 3rd sortie in pilot training, because they've had early access to content. They've been able to absorb that. They can test online, and I can make better use of the time on the flight line.
It almost sounds like a force multiplier in essence by maximizing the productivity both of instructor pilots and the students. and I'm sure that frees up resources to apply elsewhere.
Yeah, it absolutely does. You know, and the goal here with Undergraduate Pilot Training 2.5, which is this new program, is we wanted to improve quality and obviously capacity of the plants that we have right now. And one of the ways to do that was to try and shorten the pilot training pipeline and online access to content. We've been able to do that. So for instance, it used to be 12 months for every Air Force pilot going through. We've cut that by about 3 months for those that are going to fly heavy airplanes. And so, yeah, that's absolutely allowed us to increase capacity inside the pipeline.
Great, that's fascinating. And Chris, I'd like to switch over to you for a moment. You have quite a different role as the principal cyber advisor to the Secretary of the Navy. And if you could talk a little bit about that role, I think people are maybe less familiar with your role and how you're focused more on enabling mission success. And just based on what Colonel Johnson and Major Kim talked about, what are you seeing in the Navy about how to leverage these kinds of technologies to solve mission problems, and how do you think through that and advise from your role?
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't say I don't have as much interaction at the kind of where the rubber meets the road per se. But what I will say is that the challenges that the Secretary and the department face, training is certainly one of them. So I'm just listening to the two other panel presenters, and it's got my mind racing on how we do this. One of the interesting challenges that we're trying to do in the Navy is, and the Marine Corps and the Army and the Air Force, we're all trying to train a mission force right now, a cyber mission force. The way that we would collaborate, the way we would share information. Some of these things I heard on Box were interesting as far as the segmentation of information, classification. Can you market a certain way? I mean, that all has certain applications we could use. But again, the relationship that is shared between myself and the CIO is the one side of the house really comes in and tries to figure out what are the best applications, tools, networks. We kind of coin as the information environment. What is the network that we're going to put together that enables all of these things? And then there's a new side, probably the newer side of the equation, has got to come in and try and figure out how to use or operationalize all of these things. And actually, to have a member on the panel who talks about aviation training, there's the fundamentals that I think we've all done for a long, long time in IT. We're getting good at connecting things, making things work. Let's call that flying in the pattern. I have my own pilot. I am a pilot in my own right. Private pilot, never was a military pilot. And I understand how to talk on the radio, fly in the pattern, and do some basic emergency procedures. I've never been shot at. I've never had to do a 1 or 2 circle aerial combat maneuver fight. That is not what they train commercial pilots. And I think what we're learning in the IT and the cyber world is there's the creation of the environment and how it builds and flies, and the maintainer and keep the thing up in the air. And then there's how to fight it as a platform. And we are tiptoeing into the world of how to fight this network, which is really where more of the PCA sort of time and effort is spent, training a mission force, training, operators, trying to figure out what delivering effects in this environment actually look like, and then how to really use some of these tools. So as an example, there's a lot of commercial tools that could be used in unique in various ways. And how do we think through the application of those maybe beyond what they were initially designed to go do? And that's another sort of area that I dabble in, to look at things that we have brought into the environment, and are there dual uses of that technology that we might not have envisioned?
Great, thanks. And for Colonel Johnson and Major Kim, I'd like to hear your thoughts on something Chris mentioned, which is sort of that conversation between the CIO, the cyber community, and then you as mission users. I imagine that both of you, as you were trying to solve your mission challenges, ran into some interesting discussions with the IT department. And I think, when you look back and look forward, what are some best practices or advice on how to, make that a collaborative effort, but get things done for your folks and not wait for the IT department to sort of push technology? How do you drive that? What were your lessons learned over your 2 examples that you gave? Colonel Johnson, why don't you go first?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Wynn. I think that's a great question. I think it gets to the heart of what we're talking about here today. I love cybersecurity. I love CIOs. I love that they provide some structure for us. But one of the things that allowed us to succeed here, and, from my point of view, if it's not easy to use, if it's not easily accessible, then I don't want it. It doesn't work for me. And our CIO was fantastic through this process. What they allowed us to do, instead of going and trying to find an approved system out there, they actually let us, look at the user interface. They looked at us, said, what do you need? What do you want? And then they went and said, hey, let us try and find a way for this to make this work for you. Is instead of going, hey, Colonel Johnson, here's the approved system, you go figure out how to make this work. For the first time in my Air Force career, we did it the other way around, and they listened to us. And I really think that was because, the leadership at the time, General Quast, said, listen to the user. And we had that top cover to where the CIO said, yes, sir, sounds good. We'll listen to the user. And that collaboration, you can call it congruent engineering, whatever you want. They were listening to the user, and we were working hand in hand with the CIO. We weren't waiting on authorities to operate. They gave us a little bit of room to find out what worked for the user. Is there risk associated with that? Absolutely. There's a little bit of risk, but they let us assume that risk so we could find something that worked for the user. And that was the biggest key to us making the advances we made over the last 2 years.
Thanks. Major Kim?
Thank you. And a few things that come to my mind. One is, one lessons learned was that when it came time to describing our requirement to the IT folks, hey, this is what we need, we had to really communicate not only the requirement, but the why behind the requirement. So an example that I'll give you is, as lawyers, we have to follow the rules that we have for ethical rules from our licensing bodies. So for my license, I have to make sure that I safeguard my client's information, and there's an attorney-client confidentiality and privileged information that I have to safeguard. And I'll communicate to our IT folks that, hey, we need a platform that allows me to safeguard, the sensitive information. But if I don't explain that that's in the context of my professional responsibility, not necessarily worried about, hackers or outsiders, but I'm also concerned about safeguarding that piece of confidential information, even from my fellow attorneys in the office. If they're not part of my case, then I need them to be walled off. So explaining the why behind the requirement, I realize, is also important. The second part is, getting the feedback from users at all different levels within our organization. So as I mentioned earlier, we're comprised of lawyers, paralegals, defense investigators. Many of us are green suiters, but also we have civilian workers. And what we realized was, hey, a paralegal's perspective on cloud computing will be very different from a lawyer's perspective on cloud computing. A paralegal might be more concerned about workflow automation, whereas the attorney is more concerned about keeping the information confidential or getting the discovery information. So, making sure that if we're trying to figure out what our need is, getting that feedback from every different type of user and every different levels within the organization to really get a robust and accurate and need. So those are a couple of the lessons learned that popped into my head as I was listening to your question.
Thanks. Chris, I want to come back to you and to talk about the balance between mission accomplishment and security, and how you think through risk when you're trying to enable these things in the field. You made a comment when we were met yesterday about that, and you had a quote that I found interesting, that ransomware is the strategic bombing of the 21st century. And maybe talk a little bit about more broadly what you meant about that in terms of how do we secure our data, and how do you balance the needs of the field with a real threat from cyber?
Yeah, so when you look at so one of the interesting, I think we're in these sort of fundamental shifts in warfare. Fundamentally, what is warfare? And the things that we've used to enable training, technology, communications, collaboration, all the things that these wonderful devices that we're all talking on, right, have sort of allowed us to go do. Again, I know it's an overused term, and that this is the new warfighting domain. This is the area where information gets shared. warfare is moving beyond this idea that I need to contest you physically, which means I can more likely contest you cognitively. I just want to, the real target is your brain pan. And if I can get in here and I can make you do something I want you to do, that's fundamentally what Clausewitz was talking about 100 years ago when he wrote, On War. It's simply the two bodies that meet. And if I can get the other guy to do what I want him to do, I win. So this environment that we've used as a tool to collaborate and do is really becoming the place where the rubber sort of meets the road. And what I was saying is things like when you look at tools like ransomware, and when you looked at the way we sort of conducted warfare in the 1940s with strategic air power, it's just a function of bombing somebody else's means of production, their war producing capability. I'm going to hold the way that you produce warfighting capability at risk with my air power. Well, now we've seen a transition that I can hold your production capability, your ability to distribute resources, your ability to potentially, lock up funds, lock up information, do what you do. I can hold that at risk now with ransomware. So I do no longer have to fly a fleet of planes over your cities. I can just lock up all your information and just make it unusable to you, or degrade your ability to push resources around. Which ultimately affects your ability to do everything else. So your planes are on the ground because I've shut down a pipeline and I can't push a slug of fuel to a base that requires, avgas. And the people, the military planners that begin to understand how these tools are used, it's just opened up a whole new dimension of effects that can be delivered in this space that go well beyond kinetic. And really, when you look at all the writings and the discussions in this area of the continuity of conflict and really now where we keep engage our adversaries below the level of armed conflict, right? This competition phase. Well, competition is a gentleman's way of saying I'm just going to keep it clean. We'll keep it polite, but I will engage you without having to hurt you. But I'll be just as effective at the end of the day. And I think the full understanding of the way we use information systems, and that the people that provide that information and enable those things are every bit as important to war fighting as anything else that we do in the military. And that's really where this narrative has been coming from, the principal cyber advisors working closely with the CIOs to do the things. And I agree with the colonel, right? We need to listen to the customer, because there's been a long time that the people that provided this capabilities were sort of arrogant about the way they did it. Here's your computer system, here's the button, turn it on, learn to use it. We'll replace it in 10 years when it's time to do the next, mod or tech refresh. And we have to we have to listen to the end user. The end user is the one that needs to use these tools to accomplish we don't do IT for the sake of IT. We do IT to enable all these other things. And I think the CIO community really is in the process of taking a long, hard look at that's really why we exist. But we need the warfighters to acknowledge that, we are also part of the warfighting solution. It's a give and take.
The importance of data in today's world for our federal agencies can't be overstated, and working through that with the conversation between the CIO, shop and the mission users is so critical. I want to give each of you a chance to sort of talk to the audience and provide any advice or feedback, more along the lines of what do you see going forward with collaboration? I think, Jay, you may have mentioned, how do you apply machine learning to virtual training environments going forward? But, as you think back on the journey you've taken, where do you think it's headed next, and what advice would you have for our audience members? And Jay, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, thanks, Wynn. I appreciate it. It's been a long kind of 2-year journey here, and there's been a lot of lessons learned. One of them is culture change is hard, and it takes time. We learned that kind of the hard way. Technology, these days at least, is absolutely part of the solution. The fact is 60% of our training here is done in simulated devices of all different types now, and all of those are now connected. So we've got to be networked. You absolutely have to be in every way, shape, or form. The other one for me, at least as the end user, and I know, for Mr. Cleary, it's a little bit different from his perspective, but in the case of our transformation here, policy caught up. Policy didn't lead the way, the policy caught up with us. once we found a solution that works. And we obviously had to be empowered to do that. And that was one of the things that really allowed us to succeed here, as well as that top cover, that belief from our leadership and the empowerment to go find something that works. And then they would back us up with the policy and then funding, obviously, because all of this takes money for sure. As I look to the future, we're becoming more and more reliant on technology. One of the things we're working on right now is remote sim instruction. It is hard for me to get civilian sim instructors to want to live in Enid America, as wonderful a place as Enid America is. I would rather have somebody sitting in Virginia that's got the skill set I need, that is able to remote in and teach students in sims that are sitting here in Enid America. We have the capability to do that, but it requires a network that's easily accessible for us. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. And then when you mentioned it, AI is absolutely on our minds. All of the things that I have loaded on box.com and all the access to those publications are great. The students learn it. They come into the sim and they apply it. If I can have AI built into those simulators to where the student goes in the sim and tries to do a loop, and the AI knows exactly what the parameters for that loop are and can give that student instant feedback inside of that simulator. I just freed up a body to go fly airplanes, and I gave that student instant feedback. So that's absolutely one of the things that we're looking at. All of that requires risk management for us, and that's why we work closely with our CIO to try and mitigate that along the way. Here, at least in the training environment, for me, using what we call white jets, so there's not a lot of classified information, it's a little bit easier. But as soon as I start looking at the follow-on training units for F-35s or F-22s or B-2s, that process becomes much, much more complicated, and security plays into that a lot more. So my biggest lesson learned is the end user and that CIO need to be linked at the hip from day one to come forward with a solution that's going to work.
Yeah, great advice, Jay. Thanks. Major Kim?
Thank you, Win. I look back to when I was a brand new judge advocate as a prosecutor 11 years ago. The amount of information that I was dealing with back then, even if it's just 11 years ago, was substantially smaller than what I'm dealing with now. The amount of discovery that's part of a criminal investigation, whether it be cell phone information, medical records, videos and photos, it's just ginormous. So what the next thing I think is not only have a cloud-based platform that allows me to collaborate and share, but as Colonel Johnson mentioned, an AI that can help me process the information. Because at the end of the day, if I have all this information, but I don't go through it, I can't use any of it for my trial or for anything. So something that helps me to process the information much more quickly and efficiently. I think it's the next capability that's needed. And then similar to that is integrating of the application. So as lawyers, there are certain applications that we use. I need to create a timeline based on all the evidence that I've got. I have to go through all of that, and making sure that that the cloud-based computing also has these applications that are integrated. I mean, we had some examples earlier from the presentation, but that are very lawyer specific. I think that's what we need. Something that can help me create maps, timelines, and tools of that nature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Chris, you want to close us out today with any advice or thoughts on anything we've talked about?
Yeah, I don't know if it's advice or thoughts, but what I will say is, and I'll kind of put this back on the community that provides these things. This environment gets more and more complicated every day, but yet perceivably, is that a word? Easier for the end user, right? I don't necessarily know how everything on my computer works, but I can do things on my computer that I couldn't do 10 years ago. The collaboration we're doing right this minute is kind of evidence of that. And I think for the people who produce these capabilities and interject more and more usability and capability into them, it's our responsibility to make sure that they're being built in a way that the user can't make dumb user mistakes, right? We have to be able to ensure that we give people technology that can be used, and we don't put all the onus for understanding how to use it and the security environment and the configuration and the this, the that, and the other thing, because it's too much for the end user to figure out. The onus for that really has to be put on the developers of that technology to provide an environment that is safe, that is usable, that is productive, without too many landmines that they can arbitrarily fall into. That's on us. But on the flip side of that, hey, you got to be able to, you got to know what you're using as well, right? You can't completely abdicate your responsibility for saying, I don't understand what happens when I click on this link. I think what I've heard from the Box presentation is, a lot of that is going to help the user prevent dumb user tricks, which is a good thing. Getting the adoption of that is important. But, I'll parrot the Colonel's voice. There's only so many dollars to go around, right? And, unfortunately, a lot of things we do in the Navy are expensive. Columbia-class submarine, Ford-class aircraft carrier, the Joint Strike Fighter, to get leadership to need to put as much of an emphasis on the way that we enable our information technology and resource it appropriately is got to get on a par with those other things.
Yeah. I appreciate it, Chris. And to all our panelists, thank you so much. We're bumping up on time. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to share your thoughts with our audience. I know they appreciate it as well. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help you in your current missions. And again, thank you for your time today. Jack, it looks like we've hit kind of the end here.